falsely accused of theft. He's kicked out of his garage, just as the mysterious SUV reappears. On a snowy Detroit morning, a poor mechanic stops to help a stranger whose SUV has broken down in the street. He has no idea that this small act of kindness will cost him the only job supporting his family, and at the same time unlock a truth no one could have imagined. From the moment he touched that engine, his life was already shifting toward a destiny he never saw coming. The cold bit deeper than usual that morning, the kind of Detroit winter chill that crept under jackets and stung the skin like needles. Jaden Brooks had been standing in the drafty garage since dawn, his breath turning to mist every time he exhaled. He kept his head down, hands moving quietly over the engine of an old pickup, trying not to draw attention. It didn't matter. Frank always found him. "What's taking so long, Brooks?" Frank barked, loud enough for the waiting customer to hear. "This isn't a charity. Move faster. Or is that too much to ask?" Jaden swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, sir. Almost done." He'd said those same words 100 times before, sometimes to customers, sometimes to supervisors, sometimes to life itself. But Frank wasn't done. He stepped closer, lowering his voice but not the cruelty in it. "You're lucky to even have this job. Try not to lose it today." A couple of customers glanced over, some with pity, most with dismissal. Detroit was full of men like Jaden, young, tired, trying to stretch a week's paycheck across a month's worth of bills. Nobody looked twice at another one being scolded. Jaden tightened the last bolt, wiped his hands, and stepped aside so Frank could inspect the job. Before he could even breathe, Frank waved him off. "Take the trash out. Maybe that's something you can't mess up." He didn't argue. He never did. He pushed the trash bin outside into the brittle air, blinking as the brightness of the snow made his eyes water. The wind bit through his thin jacket, but he preferred the cold over Frank's voice. He was heading back in when he noticed her. An older woman stood on the side of the road, bundled in a faded coat, her hands trembling from the cold. Her SUV sat crookedly on the snowy shoulder, hood popped open, steam drifting upward into the gray morning sky. Cars drove past without slowing. People glanced, but didn't stop. Jaden hesitated only a second. He knew what Frank would say if he saw him out here again. He knew he was already on thin ice, but he also knew what it felt like to stand somewhere hoping, praying that someone would notice. Walking toward her, he raised his voice gently. "Ma'am, you need help?" The woman looked up, startled, her face pale and exhausted. I don't know what happened. It just died on me. And my hands..." She winced as she touched the hood. "Don't touch that," Jaden said softly. "It's burning hot." She stepped back, letting him take over. Snow crunched under his knees as he knelt down to inspect the engine. Cold seeped through his pants, but he kept working, his fingers steady and practiced. The woman shivered violently, so he spoke lightly to keep her calm. "Good thing you broke down near the garage. Looks like your coolant line froze. Happens a lot in this weather." "You can fix it?" she asked, voice shaky. "Yes, ma'am. Give me a minute." He worked fast, improvising with what he had, warming the frozen line with cloth and engine heat, clearing the blockage, adjusting clamps until the system held again. His hands ached with cold, but he ignored it. When the engine sputtered back to life, the woman gasped. "Oh my goodness! Thank you! How much do I owe you?" Jaden stood slowly, wiping snow from his knees. "Nothing, ma'am. Just glad you're warm again." She stared at him for a long moment. Too long. Something thoughtful and unreadable in her eyes, as if she were studying the lines of his face, the steadiness of his hands, the sincerity in his voice. "What's your name?" she finally asked. "Jaden," he said, smiling faintly. "Jaden Brooks." The woman repeated his name under her breath, her expression shifting into something strange, almost like recognition. Before Jaden could ask if she was all right, she closed her coat tightly around herself and said in a soft, almost reverent tone, "Thank you, Jaden. People don't usually stop." He shrugged, embarrassed. "My mama raised me not to walk past someone who needs help." Snow flurries drifted between them as she gave one final lingering look, like she was memorizing him, before stepping into her SUV and driving away. Jaden turned back toward the garage, unaware that his life had just shifted, barely perceptibly, in a way he would not understand until far later. But as he walked back through the falling snow, he couldn't shake one thing. Why did her face feel so strangely familiar? The cold wind pushed against him as he stepped back into the garage, brushing flakes off his jacket. The warmth inside didn't help. Frank stood near the counter with his arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes already locked on Jaden like he'd been waiting for a target. A couple of customers sat in plastic chairs, sipping burnt coffee and pretending not to listen. Mechanics nearby slowed their work, sensing trouble. "Where were you?" Frank's voice cracked through the room like a whip. Jaden swallowed, breath fogging the air. "A lady outside broke down. She was shaking in the cold. I helped her get her car running." Frank barked a laugh. "So now you're a street hero? You think we run a charity out there?" Jaden didn't respond. He'd learned that defending himself only made things worse. Frank didn't wait. "You leave your post without permission. You do work we don't get paid for. And you do it while we're behind schedule. You cost me money, Brooks." He looked around theatrically, as if putting on a show for anyone watching. "You cost this shop money." Jaden's throat tightened. She needed help. It didn't seem right to. "That's the point," Frank snapped. "You don't think, you just act. And now you're trying to make me look like the bad guy in front of customers?" One of the customers looked up, uncomfortable. Frank saw it and raised his voice even more. "You know what? I'm done with this. Pack up your stuff." Jaden blinked. "Sir, you're firing me? You fired yourself the second you walked out that door." Frank stepped closer, the smell of gasoline and stale coffee clinging to him. "Clean out your locker, and don't come back tomorrow, or ever." The world seemed to tilt. For a moment, Jaden couldn't feel his hands. The air felt too thin. "Frank, please," he managed. "My mom's sick. And my little brother. Not my problem." Frank tossed a hand dismissively. "And while we're on the subject, you might want to think twice before trying to get hired somewhere else in this city." Jaden froze. "What do you mean?" Frank's smirk was slow and deliberate. "Other shops don't want thieves." The word hit harder than any punch. "I'm not a thief." "Sure you aren't." Frank leaned in. "But you've been seen poking around parts bins you shouldn't be near. And if someone calls me for a reference?" His shrug was casual, cruel. "I'll tell them the truth as I see it." Jaden's pulse hammered in his ears. "That's not true, Frank. You know I never—" Frank waved him off like swatting at dust. "Locker, now!" Jaden stood there for a heartbeat, then another, until the room started closing in around him. He turned away before anyone could see the sting in his eyes. His boots dragged across the cement floor toward the back hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside his locker, There wasn't much, just a pair of work gloves with holes in the palms, a thrift store jacket, and the little black and white photo of him, Malik, and Mom taken at Belle Isle Park years ago. He slid the photo into his pocket, zipping it shut with hands that trembled despite the cold. He didn't realize he was holding his breath until he stepped outside and the icy air slapped him awake. Customers from the waiting chairs watched him through the window. Mechanics avoided eye contact as he passed. The humiliation spread through him like frostbite. The snow had gotten thicker now, drifting in slow, lazy circles. He walked to the edge of the lot, backpack slung over one shoulder, the other hand buried deep in his pocket for warmth. Cars rushed past on the slushy road, their tires hissing like whispers he couldn't quite make out. He didn't know where to go. He didn't know what he'd tell his mom. He didn't know what Malik would think when he came home empty-handed. He just knew he couldn't stand in that parking lot 1 second longer. Jaden crossed the street, head down, when something caught the corner of his eye. A polished black SUV idling a few yards away, its engine humming low, breath-like plumes of exhaust rising from the tailpipe. The same SUV, the same woman's vehicle. His steps slowed. The windows were tinted, impossible to see through, but he felt the weight of someone watching him. The air around him shifted, tightened, like the moment before thunder. The SUV didn't pull away, it just sat there, waiting. Jaden's stomach twisted uncomfortably. He turned away and kept walking, trying to ignore the feeling crawling up his spine. He tightened his grip on his backpack strap and forced himself forward through the falling snow. But after a few seconds, he couldn't help looking back over his shoulder. The SUV was still there, still watching. And for the first time that morning, a strange, uneasy thought settled deep inside him. That woman wasn't done with him yet. Jaden pulled his jacket tighter and walked faster, boots crunching through the mixture of salt and slush on the sidewalk. The SUV stayed put for a moment longer, long enough to make his heartbeat climb, before it slowly rolled away, disappearing around the corner like a shadow slipping back into the dark. He tried to tell himself it meant nothing. People stop. People stare. Maybe she'd just been passing by. But the feeling didn't leave him. By the time he reached the bus stop, the cold had stiffened his fingers. A few others were waiting. An older man hunched under a knit hat, a woman with grocery bags piled around her boots. Nobody spoke. Detroit winters made people quiet. The wind did the talking. Jaden checked the time on his cracked phone screen. Mom would already be awake. Malik, too. They'd ask how work was. He didn't have an answer for that yet. When the bus finally arrived, everyone climbed aboard in a weary shuffle. Heat blasted from the vents, carrying the scent of rubber and old vinyl seats. Jaden sank into the back row, hugging his backpack to his chest, letting the city blur past the fogged-up windows. He replayed the morning in his mind. The woman, her trembling hands, the way she'd looked at him like she saw something more than a mechanic kneeling in the snow. And then Frank. Frank slamming the door shut on every paycheck Jaden had counted on. His chest tightened. Rent was due in a week. Malik's school fees overdue. Mom's insulin nearly out. He tightened his grip on his backpack. "I'll figure it out," he whispered to himself. "I have to." The bus rumbled deeper into the east side, past boarded-up storefronts, faded murals, and rows of narrow brick houses with sagging roofs. Snow coated the sidewalks like a dull blanket, softening the noise of the city. When he stepped off, the wind hit him again, sharp and raw, carrying the faint smell of burning wood from someone's fireplace. The front door groaned when he pushed it open. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a living room with thrift store furniture, and a kitchen lined with cabinets that never fully closed. But it was warm, at least warmer than outside. "Jay?" his mother called from the kitchen table, her voice soft, as if tiredness lived inside it permanently. She was wrapped in her thickest sweater, hands cupped around a mug of tea. The lines on her face were deeper today, shadows under her eyes darker. He mustered a smile. "Morning, Mom." She studied him, eyes narrowing. "You're home early." "Slow day," he said quickly. "Frank cut me loose for the afternoon." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't press. Instead, she gestured toward the small pill organizer in front of her. "We're out of the Thursday dose. I took half of Wednesday's, but it's not lasting like it used to." Jaden's stomach twisted. "I'll get more, Mom. Don't worry." The truth burned in his throat. He didn't know how he'd pay for it. From the hallway, Malik's voice floated out. "Jay, that you?" A moment later, his little brother stepped into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder. At 16, Malik was tall and lanky, with eyes too bright for a kid who'd seen too much struggle. He dropped his backpack by the fridge and leaned against the counter. "You working tonight?" Malik asked. Jaden hesitated. "No, not tonight." "Good. We could use a break." Malik held up a school letter. "But hey, they said I can't go back to the robotics program until the fees are paid." The letter trembled slightly in his hand. Jaden took it, scanning the amount. It felt like a punch to the ribs. "I'll handle it," Jaden said quietly. Malik nodded, trusting him. That trust stung almost as much as the debt. The rest of the day moved slowly. His mother rested on the couch, blanket pulled up to her chin. Malik sat on the floor doing homework, pencil tapping out a nervous rhythm. Jaden paced the small kitchen, staring at the numbers on the overdue bills pinned to the fridge. Every one of them felt like a ticking clock. By evening, the snow had stopped, leaving the city muted under a pale sky. Jaden stepped outside to catch his breath, leaning on the railing of the front steps. His breath came out in white clouds. That's when he saw it. A white paper bag sitting neatly at the bottom of the steps. Steam rose from the top, carrying the smell of fresh cornbread and stew. Beside it lay a small envelope, no name, no address, just tucked safely beneath the bag so it wouldn't blow away. Jaden crouched, picked it up gingerly, and opened it. Inside was a single $20 bill. His pulse quickened. He looked around, scanning the street, the parked cars, the dim porch lights flickering across the block. Nobody was there. But across the street, a neighbor's porch light reflected off the side of a dark SUV. The same polished black paint, the same silhouette, the same vehicle from the garage. Jaden's breath caught. He blinked hard and stepped onto the sidewalk, squinting through the gray dusk. The SUV backed away slowly, almost respectfully, before turning the corner and disappearing into the night. His heart pounded, not from fear this time, but from something else. Confusion, unease, gratitude, all tangled together. He carried the food inside, set it on the table, and said nothing. He didn't want to worry his mom. Didn't want Malik teasing him about mystery benefactors. But as he sat there, sharing warm stew with his family, he couldn't shake the truth beneath the comfort. Someone had been watching him. Someone who knew where he lived. Someone who cared enough to bring food. Or someone who cared enough to test him. Jaden stared out the frosted window, his reflection ghost-like against the darkness. The SUV had returned once today, but something deep down, something he didn't want to admit, told him it would return again. And next time, whoever was inside might not stay in the shadows. Detroit mornings after a snowfall had a certain quiet to them, a stillness that settled over the buildings like a heavy blanket. Jaden woke early, not because he had somewhere to be, but because worry didn't let him sleep long. He lay in bed for a moment, staring up at the cracked ceiling, listening to the radiator hiss like it was trying its best with what little strength it had left. He had no job to rush to, no shifts to clock in for. Just a long day stretching out in front of him, filled with responsibilities he still wasn't sure how he'd meet. But he pushed himself out of bed anyway, feet sliding into the same worn boots he'd owned for years. In the kitchen, Malik sat at the table eating cereal out of a mug because they were down to one clean bowl. He looked up as Jaden walked in. "Morning, Jay." "Morning," Jaden said, forcing a smile. "You sleep okay?" "Yeah." Malik hesitated. "Mom said you were up late. Everything cool?" Jaden nodded. "Just thinking." Malik studied him for a moment, eyes too perceptive for a 16-year-old. "You'll figure it out," he said softly, before grabbing his coat and heading for school. After Malik left and Mom went back to her room to rest, the apartment fell quiet. Jaden couldn't sit still. He stepped outside, craving air, even if it was freezing. Frost coated the railings, glittering in the pale sunlight. The street was lined with tire tracks cutting through the snow, evidence of the city waking up. His eyes instinctively drifted to the spot where the SUV had been parked the night before. Empty. He exhaled, tension easing from his shoulders, but only slightly. The memory lingered like fog. Trying to chase it off, he walked toward Mrs. Henderson's house next door. She was an elderly widow who lived alone and whose car had sounded like it was begging for mercy every time she tried to leave the driveway. Her screen door creaked open when he knocked. "Jaden, baby, what you doing out in this cold?" she asked. "Just checking on you, ma'am," he replied with a gentle smile. "Heard your car yesterday. Sounds like it could use a little love." "Oh, don't I know it?" she sighed. "But I can't afford the shop right now, not with the gas bill they just sent me." "Let me take a look," he said. Her eyes widened. "You already helped last month. I can't keep asking you." "You didn't ask," Jaden said softly. "I'm offering." Outside, he popped the hood and breathed in the familiar smell of old oil and worn belts. The cold stiffened his fingers, but the motions were muscle memory. He tightened a loose connection, adjusted the aging serpentine belt, and topped off the coolant from the jug he'd brought. When he started the engine, it hummed smoother than it had in years. Mrs. Henderson clapped her hands together. "Lord, this boy's a miracle. Let me at least give you something." She pulled out her wallet, but Jaden quickly shook his head. "No, ma'am. Just glad you're safe on the road." "You've got a heart on you, Jaden," she said, eyes soft. "Your mama raised you right." Her words warmed him more than the weak winter sun ever could. He spent the rest of the morning walking through the neighborhood, helping where he could. A kid whose bike chain had jammed, a man trying to start a stubborn snowblower, a stray cat shivering under a porch that he coaxed into safety. Small things, quiet things, the kind of things he'd always done because they felt right. But every now and then he felt the weight of eyes on him, like someone was tracking him through the shifting streets. By early afternoon, he wandered into the small auto parts store a few blocks away, hoping to find a cheap replacement wrench for the one he'd broken last week. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow on shelves lined with tools and motor oil. He picked up the wrench, checking its weight in his hand. It wasn't much, but even this small purchase made his stomach twist. Money was thin. Thin in a way he hadn't felt since he was a kid, watching Mom decide which bill could wait one more week. When he approached the counter, the clerk, a young guy with a backwards cap and bored eyes, looked him up and down. "You paying with cash?" the clerk asked. Jaden nodded. "Yeah." "You sure? We've had incidents." The clerk's gaze lingered on him, judgment thick as smoke. Jaden felt the sting of it, deep and familiar. "Just ring it up," he said quietly. The clerk smirked, but scanned the item. Jaden placed his last few crumpled bills on the counter. The clerk checked each one like it might dissolve in his hand, then finally handed over the wrench. As Jaden stepped outside, the cold hit him again. But it wasn't the cold that made his shoulders tighten. It was the black SUV parked across the street. He froze, heart pounding once more. This time, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed. Not someone from this neighborhood. Not someone who'd normally walk these snow-laced sidewalks. He crossed the street with careful steps, as if trying not to startle Jaden. "Excuse me," the man said, voice steady and polite. "Are you Jaden Brooks?" Jaden's breath fogged the air between them. He tightened his grip on the wrench inside the bag. "Yeah," he answered slowly. "Who's asking?" The man offered a small, almost apologetic smile. "My name is Evan. Evan Cole." Jaden blinked. The name meant nothing to whom, but the intensity behind Evan's gaze did. "I believe," Evan continued, "you helped someone very important to me yesterday." Jaden's pulse raced. "The woman with the SUV?" Evan nodded once. "My mother." The winter around them seemed to hush, as if the snow itself leaned in to listen. Jaden swallowed hard. Is she okay?" "She is," Evan said. "But she asked me to find you. She'd like to speak with you." Jaden stepped back slightly, confusion tightening his chest. "Why? I didn't do anything special." Evan's expression shifted, something between admiration and solemnity. "You'd be surprised," he murmured. Then, after a moment, "We need to talk, but not here. If you have time, there's a cafe nearby." Jaden hesitated. He looked toward home, toward the store, toward the SUV that had been following him for days. Something inside him whispered, "This moment matters. It might be danger. It might be opportunity. It might be both." But it was no accident. Evan took a step back, giving him space. "Please. Just a conversation." Jaden exhaled slowly, watching the ghost of his breath fade into the cold. "Okay," he said, voice low. "Lead the way." And as he followed Evan down the snowy sidewalk, one truth pulsed in his chest. Whatever came next, his life was no longer walking in place. The wind swept around them as they moved through the neighborhood. Two figures from vastly different worlds walking side by side across cracked pavement buried under winter. The cafe Evan mentioned sat on the corner of a quiet block, its neon open sign flickering faintly against the gray sky. Warm light spilled onto the snow through fogged windows, offering a kind of refuge that felt almost unreal after the morning Jaden had endured. Inside, the scent of roasted coffee and baked bread wrapped around him like a blanket. Evan motioned him toward a booth near the back, away from the few customers scattered along the counter. It wasn't until they sat that Jaden realized just how upscale Evan looked. Tailored coat, leather gloves, scarf that probably cost more than Jaden's monthly bus pass. He didn't belong in this cold, hard neighborhood. He didn't belong in this cafe either, not really. But Jaden did. And yet, somehow, Evan didn't look out of place. He looked intentional. A waitress with tired eyes and a warm smile walked over. "What can I get y'all?" "Coffee for me," Evan said. "Black." Jaden hesitated. His wallet felt impossibly light in his pocket. "Just water, please." The waitress nodded and left. Evan watched him for a moment, something like understanding flickering behind his calm expression. "You don't have to order small on my account," he said gently. Jaden shook his head. "I'm good." Evan didn't argue. The silence between them stretched until the drinks arrived. Jaden wrapped his fingers around the cold glass of water, just to have something to hold. He felt like a kid sitting in the principal's office, without knowing why he'd been called. Evan reached into his coat, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table. It was thin, but the weight of it felt heavy, almost ominous. "I imagine you're wondering why I've come looking for you," he began. Jaden swallowed hard. "Honestly, yeah. I don't get followed by SUVs every day." A ghost of a smile touched Evan's lips. "Fair enough." He opened the folder. Inside were printed stills, grainy but clear enough to recognize. Jaden's breath caught. They were images of him kneeling in the snow beside the SUV, his hands on the engine, his clothes soaked from the melting flakes. The woman, Evan's mother, watching him with that same unreadable expression. Jaden's stomach tightened. "Where did you get these?" "From the vehicle's onboard camera," Evan replied calmly. "The car records everything for insurance and diagnostic purposes." Jaden stared at the images. The cold in the pictures felt sharper now than it had that morning. "She didn't tell me she recorded anything," he murmured. "She didn't," Evan said. "She didn't even check the footage. I did." Jaden lifted his eyes slowly. "Why?" Evan took a sip of his coffee before answering. "My mother has heart issues. She's supposed to avoid extreme temperatures, especially cold, but sometimes she wanders. She hates being treated like she's fragile. She hates feeling helpless." He paused, eyes softening. "When her SUV stalled yesterday, she was alone, scared. But you didn't hesitate. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't know who she was or what she had. You just helped." Jaden felt heat rise in his face. Anyone would have done the same. Evan shook his head. "No, they wouldn't have. I reviewed the footage from the street cameras near the scene. At least a dozen people walked past her. Even a police cruiser drove by without stopping." Jaden's hands tightened around the glass. "She looked cold, that's all," he muttered. "And you looked," Evan said quietly, "like someone who refuses to let people suffer alone." The words sat heavy between them. Jaden shifted uncomfortably. Compliments always felt like shoes that didn't fit, tight in the wrong places, loose where they shouldn't be. "What does any of this have to do with me?" he asked. "Why come all the way to my neighborhood? Why follow me home?" Evan took a breath. "Because my mother wants to speak with you. She asked me to find you, and she rarely asks for anything." Jaden bristled. "If she wants to thank me, she doesn't need to go through all this trouble." "It's more than that," Evan said. "She said it herself last night. That young man saved me. And after what happened when you tried to help her, after seeing these images, he tapped the folder gently. I think she's right. Jaden blinked. Saved her? I didn't. You did, Evan said firmly. If she'd been stuck much longer in that cold, she might not be alive today. Silence rippled outward like a shockwave. Jaden's throat tightened. Is she okay now? Yes, Evan reassured him. She's stable, but she hasn't stopped talking about you. She wants to meet again. Not on the side of a snowy road. Not by accident. He leaned back slightly, studying Jaden as though trying to measure his character through every nuance of expression. She's on the 38th floor of her building today. She asked me to bring you there. Jaden's breath hitched. Her building? Evan nodded once. Cole Automotive Headquarters. Jaden's stomach dropped. Everyone in Detroit knew that name, one of the biggest automotive companies in the country. A skyscraper with glass windows that seemed to touch the clouds. A place for executives, innovators, people who belonged to a different world. Not for a broke mechanic who'd just been fired. You sure she wants to see me? Jaden asked quietly. Absolutely, Evan said. You made an impression. A strong one. Jaden stared down at the table, processing everything. The cafe lights cast a warm glow on the worn wood surface, contrasting the storm of uncertainty swirling inside him. I don't know, he whispered. I don't have a job now. I don't have nice clothes. I don't even know what I'd say to her. Evan's voice softened. Just be yourself. That's who she wants to talk to. Jaden rubbed his hands together, anxiety flickering in his chest like a faulty spark plug. What if she thinks I expected something? What if she thinks I helped her just to get something out of it? That's exactly why she wants to meet you, Evan said. Because you didn't. Jaden felt something shift inside, a fragile thread pulling him toward a path he'd never seen before. What happens if I say no? He asked. Nothing, Evan said honestly. You walk out of here, and life goes on just as it has been. Jaden's pulse quickened. Life going on as it had been meant bills piling up, meager savings dwindling, his mother's health uncertain, Malik's opportunities narrowing. But saying yes meant stepping into the unknown. Evan watched him quietly, patiently. Jaden exhaled slow, steady. Okay, he murmured. I'll go. Evan nodded once, relief flickering across his face. Good, he said gently. Finish your water. We'll leave in 5 minutes. Jaden's fingers tightened around the glass once more. Outside the window, a flurry of snow drifted past, swirling like tiny sparks caught in the winter light. He didn't know it then, but with those 5 minutes, his old life was already slipping away, and a new one was waiting on the 38th floor. The ride across downtown Detroit felt unreal, like Jaden had stepped into someone else's morning. Evan drove the black SUV with practiced calm, weaving through traffic while the city unfurled outside the windows. Towering glass buildings, steam rising from manholes, people rushing across icy sidewalks with paper cups and heavy coats. Jaden watched it all like he was seeing a world he had only ever passed by but never entered. He clasped his hands together, rubbing warmth into his fingers. The silence inside the SUV was comfortable for Evan, but heavy for him. Too many questions pressed on his mind, none of them having anywhere to go. You don't need to be nervous, Evan said suddenly, eyes still on the road. My mother is kind. Direct, yes, but kind. Jaden nodded, though his throat felt tight. I'm not nervous. Evan chuckled softly. You are. Jaden let out a breath that fogged the glass beside him. I'm nobody important. That's not how she sees you. Evan's voice softened. Not anymore. The SUV turned onto a wide boulevard where Cole Automotive headquarters rose like a monument of steel and mirrored windows. The sun broke through the clouds just enough to glint off the building's exterior, reflecting the city back at itself in shimmering fragments. Jaden stared upward, jaw slack. He'd seen the building before, from bus windows, from news stories, from a distance, but never imagined standing in front of it. You ready? Evan asked as he parked underground. No, Jaden thought. Not even close. But he nodded. They stepped into a private elevator tucked into a quiet corridor, its walls lined with brushed metal that gleamed under soft lighting. The moment the doors slid shut, the elevator hummed to life, rising smoothly, silently. Jaden's stomach fluttered with each passing floor number that blinked overhead. 12, 17, 24. By 30, his heartbeat felt louder than the elevator motor. He wiped his palms on his jeans, wishing he'd worn something better, something that didn't scream, blue-collar kid who doesn't belong. Evan noticed. Don't worry about your clothes, he said gently. This isn't a job interview. Jaden forced a smile. Feels like something bigger. It is, Evan replied. The elevator slowed, then chimed. 38. The doors opened to a lobby unlike anything Jaden had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a sweeping view of the river, sunlight diffusing through them in a golden haze. The floors were polished marble, softening every footstep with a quiet shimmer. Modern art hung along the walls, pieces he didn't understand but couldn't look away from. A receptionist rose the moment Evan appeared. Ms. Cole is expecting you, she said, her gaze flicking curiously toward Jaden before softening into a polite smile. Evan gestured. This way. They walked down a long hallway lined with more sunlight and silent elegance until they reached a set of double-glass doors. Evan paused, turning to look at Jaden. She's on the other side, he said quietly. Take a breath. You'll be fine. Jaden inhaled once deeply, though the breath shook on the way out. Evan opened the door. There, standing near a wall of windows, was the woman from the snowy roadside. She wasn't bundled in a coat now. Instead, she wore a tailored charcoal gray suit, a silk scarf draped neatly around her neck. Her posture radiated authority, but her eyes, the same soft blue eyes from yesterday, held warmth. She turned at the sound of the door. Jaden, she said, as if greeting someone she had known for years. I'm glad you came. Jaden froze, then took a hesitant step forward. Ma'am, I'm surprised you remember me. She smiled gently. I don't forget kindness. Her voice held a steadiness that carried the weight of decades spent making decisions that shaped companies, industries, maybe even cities. Yet it softened when she looked at him. My name is Marlene Cole, she continued, chairwoman of this company, and the woman whose life you may have saved. Jaden shook his head quickly. I just fixed your car, ma'am. She stepped closer, folding her hands. I have a heart condition, she said. The cold is dangerous for me. If I had been stuck on that road for much longer. She paused, letting the implication rest gently between them. But you didn't know that. You didn't hesitate. You saw someone in trouble and acted. Jaden swallowed hard. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said softly. They wouldn't. They didn't. I watched people walk past. People who were warm, well-dressed, perfectly capable of helping. She held his gaze. But you did. The room felt too bright, too big. Jaden's eyes stung, but he blinked the warmth away. I wasn't trying to get anything from you, he murmured. I wasn't thinking about anything except that you looked cold. And that, she said, is exactly why we're having this conversation. She walked to her desk, picked up a slim folder, and handed it to him. He stared at it, confused. I had Evan find you, she said, not to repay you with charity, but because I believe in the kind of person you are. Jaden opened the folder. Inside were notes, printed observations from his moment helping her, references from street cameras showing how long he knelt there in freezing temperatures, even a brief summary Evan had prepared. His breath hitched. You watched all this? He asked. Nobody watches the helpers anymore, she said softly. I do. I have to. People who act with genuine kindness are rare, and I've built my life on seeking out people whose hearts I can trust. Her words trembled at the edges, as though layered with meaning he wasn't ready to hear. Jaden stared out at the panoramic view behind her, the city stretching toward the horizon, the river gleaming like glass under the winter sun. He felt impossibly small and unbearably seen all at once. What do you want from me? He whispered. Marlene stepped closer, her expression almost tender. I want to understand you, she said. I want to know why you stopped. I want to know why a man who has so little to give would still give without a second thought. Jaden didn't know how to answer. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had tightened bolts and held his mother's medicine bottles and patched Malik's backpack when money was too tight for a new one. Finally, he said, My mom raised me to help people. That's all. Marlene nodded, as if that single sentence confirmed everything she already believed. Good, she said quietly. Then we have much more to talk about. Jaden lifted his eyes, watching her carefully. Her voice lowered, not dramatic, but meaningful, steady and real. You changed more than my morning, Jaden, she said. You changed the way I see people again. She held his gaze, then added, And you have no idea yet how much this meeting is going to change your life. The words landed like a tremor through his chest, shaking loose something he hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility, hope, fear, all tangled together, waiting for what came next. Jaden stood in front of Marlene Cole's desk, feeling like he'd stepped onto a ledge 30 stories above the ground. Marlene watched him quietly, giving him space to breathe, to settle, to understand that this moment, this conversation, had weight far beyond a simple thank you. She gestured toward a chair near the window. Sit, Jaden, please. He hesitated, out of respect, out of uncertainty, but finally lowered himself into the leather seat. The city sprawled out behind her like a living map, lights beginning to flicker on as afternoon shifted toward evening. Snowflakes drifted softly against the glass, catching the fading light like sparks. Marlene moved with calm assurance, every step measured, every word chosen. She took her place across from him. Before we talk about anything else, she said, I want you to understand who I am and why I'm sitting across from you today. Jaden nodded, fingers tightening in his lap. She leaned back slightly, folding her hands. You know my name, you know my company, But what you don't know is that I've been stepping out of my world, quietly, anonymously, for years. I visit neighborhoods where the cold bites harder, where people struggle harder, where kindness shows itself more honestly. Her eyes softened as she watched him absorb her words. I don't go there to pretend to be something I'm not, she continued. I go because it reminds me of where I came from. Jaden blinked. He hadn't expected that. Marlene Cole was practically Detroit royalty. Wealth, influence, prestige. Hearing her talk like someone who understood his streets felt almost impossible. Before he could ask, she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. She laid it gently between them. That, she said quietly, is for you. Jaden stared at it. He didn't reach for it. His instincts, shaped by years of hardship, told him anything that looked too hopeful must have strings attached. I didn't help you for money, he said carefully. I know, Marlene replied. That's why you deserve what's inside even more. He finally picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it looked. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, almost afraid of what he might find. Inside was a formal employment offer. Cole Automotive, full-time position, a salary that made his breath catch, benefits, health coverage, a signing bonus that looked like a printing error. He froze. This can't be for me, he whispered. It's exactly for you, Marlene said. Not because of pity. I don't hire out of guilt. I hire out of recognition. Jaden's voice cracked. I'm not qualified for something like this. I'm just a mechanic. You're not just anything, she replied gently. You're someone who steps forward when others step back. Someone who sees people instead of problems. That value, you can't teach. Jaden shook his head slowly, still staring at the paper as if afraid it would vanish. I don't know if I belong here. Marlene smiled. Warm, real, almost motherly. Nobody belongs in a higher place until someone gives them a way in. Someone did that for me when I was young. I'm doing that now for you. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he blinked them away. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, she replied simply. Just tell me if you're willing to take the first step. His throat tightened. Why me? Because you reminded me of myself, she said softly. Once upon a time, I was the one kneeling in the snow. Jaden looked up sharply. Something in her voice, a quiet ache, made the room feel smaller, more intimate. She stood and walked toward the windows, motioning for him to follow. When he did, she pointed to the city below. You see those neighborhoods? The ones people overlook? The ones people pity but never step foot in? He nodded. I grew up there, she said. My father worked 3 jobs. My mother cleaned offices at night. We didn't have anything, and no one saw us until one man, one stranger, decided to help without wanting anything back. She turned back to him. You were that stranger for me. Jaden swallowed hard. But you're powerful, I'm human, she cut in, her voice gentle. And humans need each other. Silence settled between them again. Not heavy this time, just meaningful. Then she stepped closer, studying him with eyes that seemed to see deeper than he was comfortable with. Jaden, she said, you changed my life the moment you chose compassion over convenience. I want to give you a chance to change your own. The words hit him like a warm weight settling on his shoulders. He lowered his gaze to the job offer again, reading the lines for the 10th time. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel possible. And yet, there it was, printed in black ink on crisp paper, waiting for his signature. He looked back up at Marlene. "If I take this, what happens next?" Her smile returned, brighter this time. "What happens next," she said, "is up to you. But I promise you this, your life will not look the same." Jaden exhaled shakily, overwhelmed. Marlene extended her hand. He stared at it, steady, confident, open. Then he reached out and shook it, a simple gesture, but one that sealed the beginning of a future he never expected. As their hands parted, Marlene added quietly, "This is only the first step, Jaden. There's more ahead. Much more." Her tone carried something else, something unspoken, a warning, a promise, a truth he wasn't ready to face yet, but soon would be. Jaden walked out of Marlene Cole's office as if gravity had loosened its grip on him. The hallway lights felt brighter, the windows wider, the view sharper. But beneath that sudden surge of hope ran a current of disbelief, thin, fragile, pulsing with the fear that this dream might vanish the moment he blinked. Evan walked beside him, hands in his pockets, calm as ever. "You did well," he said. "I didn't do anything," Jaden murmured, still gripping the envelope in his hand like it might slip away. "You showed her who you are," Evan replied. That was enough. They stepped back into the elevator, and as the doors closed, Jaden's reflection stared back at him in the polished metal, worn jacket, calloused hands, tired eyes. Not the version of himself that belonged in a building like this. Not the version he imagined Marlene Cole would ever notice. And yet, she had. When they reached the lobby, Jaden stepped into the cold air, letting the winter wind hit him full in the chest. It grounded him, reminded him he was still the same man who'd walked into that cafe an hour before, unsure and unseen. But now something was different. He looked down at the job offer again. Real, official, waiting. He didn't have long to process it. His phone buzzed. Malik. "Hey, Jay, school called Mom. They said the fee's gotta be paid by next week. You think we'll figure it out?" Jaden stared at the message, throat tightening. His brother trusted him so completely. That trust had always been both a comfort and a weight. He typed back, "Yeah, I'm working on it. I promise." He slipped the phone into his pocket and breathed out, watching the mist fade into the cold. A second chance. A real one. The next morning, Jaden woke before sunrise, half excited, half terrified. He borrowed his uncle's iron to press the cleanest shirt he owned, tucked it into trousers that were a bit too loose, and brushed his shoes until they almost looked new. Mom watched from the doorway, wrapped in her robe, her eyes tired but warm. "You look handsome, baby," she said. "Where you headed so early?" Jaden hesitated, not wanting to raise hopes before anything was certain. But the truth slipped through anyway. "I might have gotten a new job." Her face lit up so quickly and so brightly that Jaden's heart ached. "Praise God," she whispered. "I knew something would break through for you." "Nothing's final yet," he said gently. "But it's something." She stepped forward, cupping his cheek with a hand that trembled with age and illness. "Your kindness will carry you farther than anything else. Don't forget that." He kissed her forehead, then left before emotion could betray him. Cole Automotive Headquarters looked even more imposing the second time he approached it. Inside, the receptionist guided him to a different floor this time, a sprawling workspace buzzing with activity. Engineers huddled around computer screens. Designers debated around whiteboards filled with sketches. People in sleek suits walked briskly across glass walkways overhead. It was a world of movement, ambition, precision, and Jaden felt like a stranger in all of it. Evan approached him with a nod. "Right on time. Good." They walked through the workspace together, but Jaden couldn't ignore the looks directed at him. Curious glances, raised eyebrows, quiet whispers trailing behind him like shadows. He wasn't imagining it. "Who's he?" "Must be someone special if Evan brought him. Doesn't exactly look like corporate material." Jaden kept his eyes ahead, pretending the comments slid off him, though each one pricked like a thorn. Evan led him into a small conference room. "This is where you'll start," he said. "Orientation, paperwork, meeting some colleagues." Jaden nodded but didn't speak. His mind was a whirlwind, part fear, part determination, part disbelief. He spent the next few hours learning protocols, safety procedures, the structure of the company, the layout of the massive building. It was overwhelming, but he listened hard, took notes, asked questions. He wanted, needed, to prove he deserved to be here. During lunch, he wandered into the company cafeteria, holding a tray of basic food he barely tasted. As he searched for a seat, conversation at a nearby table drifted toward him. "That new guy? Jaden?" "Yeah, heard he got hired by Marlene herself." "What did he do, save her cat?" "No clue. Looks like he should still be working at a corner garage." A few chuckles broke out. Jaden gripped his tray harder and moved away before they saw him listening. He found an empty table near the windows and sat alone. Snow fell outside in slow spirals, the world quieter beyond the glass. For a long moment, he simply breathed, steadying himself. He hadn't expected acceptance right away, but the sting was still sharp. He pulled out the job offer again and laid it on the table. "Marlene believes in me," he reminded himself. "Evan believes in me, and I believe in helping people. That has to count for something." The cafeteria door opened with a soft click. Footsteps approached. Jaden didn't look up until a tray landed gently across from his. He glanced up. A woman stood there. Mid-30s, brown curls pulled back, warm eyes, badge reading Sarah Nguyen, senior technician. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. Jaden blinked. Sure." She sat, tucking one leg beneath her chair. "You're the new guy. Jaden, right?" "Yeah," he said cautiously. "That's me." "I heard you helped Mrs. Cole," Sarah said, lowering her voice slightly. "Not many people get on her radar, and fewer impress her." He flushed. "I just fixed her car." Sarah smiled kindly. "Sometimes it's the smallest things that matter most to the right person." He didn't know what to say to that. Gratitude tugged at his chest. Before he could respond, another voice broke into the moment, louder, sharper. "Well, well," someone drawled. "New guy's already getting special invitations." A man approached, mid-30s, sharp jawline, badge reading Derek Hale, systems engineer. His smirk carried the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Sarah stiffened. "Derek, knock it off." "What?" Derek shrugged. "Just saying, some of us had to work 10 years to get noticed. Others just show up and bam, straight to the top floor." Jaden felt the heat rising in his ears. "I didn't ask for any special treatment." "Didn't have to," Derek said. "You're Ms. Cole's pet project now, right?" Sarah stood abruptly. Enough. Derek held up his hands in mock surrender. Welcome to Cole Automotive, Jaden. Hope you can keep up. He walked off, leaving a trail of tension behind him. Jaden stared at his tray, appetite gone. Don't mind him, Sarah said softly. Some folks don't handle change well. Jaden exhaled slowly. I'm not trying to take anything from anyone. I know, she said. And trust me, Marlene Cole doesn't bring someone in unless she sees something they don't. Her words calmed him more than she knew. Before she left, she added, If you ever need help adjusting, I'm around. Jaden watched her go, his chest tight but grateful. When he stepped out of the building that evening, the sun had dipped behind the skyline, casting golden reflections across the snow. He pulled his coat tighter, breath clouding the air. Behind him, the glass tower of Cole Automotive glowed like a beacon. He wasn't sure if he belonged here yet. But he was sure of one thing. He wasn't the same man who'd walked into that cafe. And he wasn't walking alone anymore. Somewhere above him, on a high floor lit by warm office lights, Marlene Cole was watching. Not judging, not testing. Waiting. Because his second chance had only just begun. For weeks, Jaden moved through Cole Automotive like a man learning to breathe in a new atmosphere, slowly, carefully, trying not to draw too much attention. He arrived early, stayed late, took notes on everything. He watched how the engineers spoke, how they debated problems, how they carried themselves with a confidence he wasn't sure he would ever feel. But he kept going. He had to. People still whispered sometimes, the way folks whisper about a storm they think might pass, but aren't quite sure. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with quiet judgment. Derek, especially, seemed determined to keep Jaden under a spotlight he didn't want. You sure you know what you're doing? Derek would say whenever Jaden approached a workstation. This ain't a corner garage. Jaden bit his tongue every time. He didn't have the luxury of snapping back. Not here. Not now. Then came the project. The one that would rope him into the center of a storm he never saw coming. Cole Automotive had been developing a new electrical module for their upcoming electric fleet. It was delicate work, 100 tiny circuits and connections, each depending on the next. Even the smallest error could shut down an entire prototype. One Tuesday morning, Sarah approached Jaden's desk, her expression tight. Hey, she said. We need you in Bay 3. There's trouble with the EV module. Jaden followed her down the hall, his stomach tightening as soon as he stepped inside the lab. Engineers huddled around a sleek silver vehicle, its hood open. The internal diagnostics screen flashing red warnings. Someone was angry, loudly angry. A man in a navy blazer, one of the project supervisors, jabbed a finger toward the screen. Who touched this last? He demanded. Voices overlapped. Someone pointed in Jaden's direction. He did. Jaden froze. I only checked the wiring harness yesterday. I didn't change anything. But the supervisor rounded on him anyway. This is a high-value module. One mistake sets us back weeks. And guess what? We're already behind. Derek stepped forward, arms crossed, eyes cold. Maybe he mixed up the connectors. This stuff isn't exactly beginner-friendly. Sarah bristled. Derek, knock it off. You know protocols, everyone logs their work. There's a trail. Exactly, Derek said smugly. Let's follow it. The supervisor checked the system logs. His shoulders stiffened. Last entry, he announced, belongs to Jaden Brooks. A low murmur rippled through the room. Jaden felt heat rush to his face. That's impossible. I tightened the retaining clips. I didn't replace or reroute anything. The supervisor ignored him. Which means the failure happened after your inspection. That's enough for liability. Hold on, Sarah cut in. We don't know that. Modules fail for 100 reasons. Manufacturing defects, voltage dips, but the supervisor wasn't listening. He was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling a review meeting. Now. Minutes later, Jaden found himself in a glass-walled conference room, his heart pounding hard enough to shake his ribs. Evan sat across from him, brows drawn tight. The supervisor paced near the window, muttering into a tablet. Others filed in slowly, taking seats, their eyes settling on Jaden. Disappointment. Doubt. The same looks he saw at the garage on the day he was fired. He swallowed hard. Evan leaned toward him. Jay, tell me straight. Did you do anything outside protocol? No, Jaden whispered. I swear, I followed everything exactly. Evan nodded, but Jaden saw something flicker in his eyes. Concern, maybe even uncertainty. The supervisor slapped a stack of papers onto the table. This module failure cost us 36 hours of work. We need accountability. Jaden lifted his chin. Please, let me explain. We already saw the logs, the supervisor snapped. Your entry was the last one. Unless you have evidence to the contrary. The door opened. Everyone went silent. Marlene Cole stepped inside, her presence shifting the air in the room like a sudden drop in temperature. Her coat still carried flecks of snow, her gloves tucked neatly beneath one arm. She surveyed the faces around the table before settling her gaze on Jaden. Why, she asked quietly, was I told that the man who saved my life is now accused of compromising one of our most delicate prototypes? The supervisor cleared his throat. Ms. Cole, the logs— I didn't ask for logs, she said, lifting a hand. I asked why. Jaden felt something tighten inside him. She was defending him. Or giving him a chance to speak. He forced himself to breathe. Ma'am, I did my job. I checked the harness like I was told. I didn't change or move anything. I would never put this company at risk. Marlene studied him for a long moment. Long enough for Jaden to feel exposed, stripped bare. Then she moved. She connected her tablet to the conference screen with a tap. A video window opened, grainy at first, then sharpening. The timestamp matched the hour Jaden had been in Bay 3. The footage showed him stepping into the workspace, moving with careful attention, checking wires, scanning the diagnostics. He closed the panel and logged out. He walked away. Minutes later, another figure slipped into frame. Derek. Murmurs exploded across the table as Derek crouched near the open panel, glancing around before pulling a small component from his pocket. He swapped it with one inside the module, fast, practiced. The footage didn't lie. Sarah whispered, "Unbelievable." Evan leaned back, jaw tightening. The supervisor went pale. Only Marlene remained still. She pressed pause. The frozen image of Derek hunched guiltily over the open hood filled the room. Then she turned toward Jaden. "Your work," she said softly, "was never the problem." Her eyes shifted to Derek. "But yours is." Derek stood abruptly. That footage is taken out of context." "No," Marlene interrupted. "It's not, and you know it." Silence thickened. Finally, she addressed the room. "Effective immediately, Derek Hale is suspended pending termination review. Security will escort him off the premises." 2 guards stepped in. Derek's face crumpled. anger and fear tangled together. "You're ruining my career for him?" "For sabotage," Marlene said firmly. "And for lying." Derek was taken out. The room exhaled. Jaden sat there, stunned, hands trembling slightly. Marlene approached him, her expression softening. "Jaden, I trust you. I trusted you before I saw this footage, but now everyone else sees why." His throat tightened. "I didn't want trouble. I just wanted to do the job right." "And you did," she said. "You do." She paused, then added, "In fact, your attention to detail helped us identify flaws we've overlooked for months. Which brings me to something I plan to share later, but now seems like the right time." She faced the room. "Jaden Brooks will be leading the next community partnership project for Cole Automotive, a major initiative based in the neighborhood where he grew up." Every head turned. Jaden froze. "Led? Him? But why me?" he finally whispered. Marlene gave a gentle, knowing smile. "Because you fix more than engines, Jaden. You fix people's faith. You fix what's broken around you without being asked. And that is the kind of leadership this company and this city needs." Jaden's vision blurred for a moment. Not from shame, not from fear, from relief, from vindication, from a weight finally lifting off his chest. Marlene touched his shoulder, steady and warm. "This isn't just a second chance," she said. "It's your future." Outside the conference room, snowflakes drifted past the windows like soft sparks of light. The day felt new, different. For the first time, Jaden didn't feel like an outsider in the building. He felt seen. He felt chosen. He felt ready. But he had no idea how deeply this new path would cut into the story of his past, or how far it would take him. And as he stepped out of the room, everything inside him whispered one truth. This wasn't the end of the storm. It was only the eye of it. Jaden walked out of the conference room with his nerves still buzzing, as if the walls behind him had been charged with electricity. Employees parted around him like water, whispering in currents he could feel but not fully hear. He kept his eyes forward, breathing steady, trying to process everything at once. Being blamed, being vindicated, Derek being escorted out, and then the project. A project tied to his neighborhood. A project he would lead. The idea felt too big, too unreal. He took the elevator down with Evan, who leaned against the wall with his hands in his pockets, studying Jaden with an expression halfway between pride and worry. "You okay?" Evan asked. Jaden exhaled a shaky breath. "I don't know. Today feels like a whole year." Evan chuckled softly. "Welcome to corporate life. Around here, everything happens too slow until suddenly it happens too fast." Jaden managed a faint smile, but his mind was still spinning. "How did she even get that footage?" he blurted. "She has access to every security channel in the building," Evan said. "And she watches them. More than you'd think." He paused. "She wasn't just defending you, Jay. She was looking for the truth. She always does." The doors opened, spilling them into the lobby, where tall glass windows glowed with late afternoon light. The sky outside was a pale blue slowly fading toward dusk, snow still drifting softly, as if the city were exhaling. Jaden stepped out into the cold, pulling his coat tighter. But even the bitter wind couldn't cut through the warmth rising in his chest. For the first time in a long time, someone had believed him without hesitation. Someone powerful. someone who mattered. He walked to the bus stop, mind racing with thoughts of his mom, Malik, the bills they owed, the hope he'd dared not hold on to, but which now felt a little closer. A bus pulled up with its brakes hissing, and Jaden climbed aboard, choosing a window seat, as the bus rumbled through Detroit's streets, passing boarded-up shops, cracked sidewalks, and corner stores with flickering neon lights. He wondered what it meant to take on a project in the place that had built him. Would people trust him? Would they even recognize him anymore? Would he be able to make a real difference? The last question hung the heaviest. The next morning, he woke before his alarm. Malik was already eating cereal at the kitchen table, legs bouncing like they couldn't hold still. "Mom told me about your project," Malik said between crunches. "A whole training center? In our neighborhood?" Jaden raised an eyebrow. "She told you? I didn't even tell her yet." "You think she sleeps when she knows you're doing something big?" "She was up half the night praying." Malik grinned. "This is huge, Jay." Jaden reached out and tapped his brother's shoulder. "It's just the start, buddy. But yeah, it could be something." But his doubts still clung to him like cold air. At Cole Automotive, his badge scanned green instantly, something he still wasn't used to. People greeted him differently now. More nods, more polite smiles. And yet, underneath those gestures, he could still feel the tension of yesterday's confrontation. Some were relieved Derek was gone. Some were angry. Some simply watched. But Sarah found him before he could slip into the lab. "Morning, Jay," she said warmly. "How you holding up?" Jaden adjusted the strap of his backpack. "Honestly, still kinda in shock." "That's normal," she said. "Just remember what happened yesterday. You didn't get lucky. You got seen." Seen. The word hit deeper than she knew. Sarah leaned in a little closer. "That project? Leading it? It's a big responsibility, but you're ready." He didn't fully believe that yet, but it mattered that she did. Later that afternoon, he was summoned to a meeting with the project's planning team. When he stepped inside the conference room, a dozen faces turned toward him. Architects, engineers, community liaisons, administrative staff. A man at the head of the table cleared his throat. "You must be Brooks," he said, motioning for him to sit. "We've been briefed. Ms. Cole wants you to lead the rollout." Jaden's stomach tightened. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." "We're expecting a full proposal draft by end of next week," the man continued. "Facility specs, budget outline, program structure, equipment requirements, everything." "Next week." Jaden blinked. Sorry, next week?" The room stiffened. A younger woman on the left whispered, "He's new." Even the click of someone's pen felt accusatory, but Jaden steadied himself. "I'll get it done," he said firmly. When the meeting ended, he packed his notes with shaky hands, overwhelmed but determined. He stayed late, combing through databases, studying blueprints from past projects, drafting ideas. Hours passed. Snow piled against the windows. Most of the office emptied. Then all of it did. Except one light. Marlene Cole herself stepped quietly into the doorway. Jaden straightened, startled. "Ms. Cole, I didn't know you were still here." "I could say the same about you," she said gently. "It's past 9. Jaden rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm trying to catch up, learn everything. I don't want to let you down." Marlene's expression softened, a mix of kindness and something almost maternal. "Jaden," she said, walking toward him, I didn't give you this opportunity because you know everything. I gave it to you because you care enough to learn what others overlook." She picked up one of his blueprints, nodding in approval. "You're already thinking about accessibility, community partnerships, affordable certifications. Most people don't consider those until the end." Jaden swallowed. "I grew up there. I know what would have helped me." "And that," Marlene said, "is precisely why this project will succeed." She paused, her eyes thoughtful. "But there's more to yesterday's fallout than you realize." Jaden frowned. "More?" Marlene folded her hands. "Engineering sabotage doesn't happen in isolation. It's part of a deeper issue, one I've been trying to fix for years. This company needs new leadership, people who understand honesty, humility, and service." Jaden stared at her, unsure where she was going. Then she stepped closer. "You're not just leading a project, Jaden. You're a part of a shift, and not everyone here will like it." Those words hit him with the weight of truth. This would not be easy. Not for him, not for the company. "But," she added, "I believe in you, more than you know." The room fell silent for a moment, just the hum of the overhead lights and the quiet warmth of her words settling into him. Marlene gathered her coat and gloves. "Get some rest," she said. "Tomorrow, we begin." Jaden watched her leave, the door clicking softly behind her. Snow swirled outside the windows like soft confetti, settling into the dark. He closed his laptop, exhaling slowly. The storm had passed, but the sky was still shifting. New winds were coming, and somehow, he knew, his story with Cole Automotive was only beginning its rise. But nothing prepared Jaden for how it would feel to drive back into the neighborhood he'd grown up in. This time not as the kid trying to escape it, but as the man returning with blueprints, funding, and a mission. The next week unfolded like a dream lived in slow motion. Meetings stacked upon meetings. Budget drafts revised, scrapped, rewritten. Engineering specs debated around long tables. Emails pouring in from people who suddenly wanted to know his opinion. Him, a former corner garage mechanic who once fixed cars in the cold for free. But the moment that anchored everything came on a Friday morning. Evan dropped a set of keys into Jaden's hand. "Take the company SUV," he said. "You're meeting the community board today. Your board." Jaden stared at the keys, the weight of them sinking into his palm. A company vehicle. He'd barely driven anything newer than a 2004 sedan his whole life. "Why me?" he whispered. Evan clapped his shoulder. "Because you know these streets better than any of us." Snow dusted the edges of cracked sidewalks as Jaden pulled into the heart of the East Side district where he'd grown up. Kids in puffy jackets kicked slush off their shoes outside the corner store. A stray dog trotted across the street, pausing only to sniff the air. And there, just beyond the basketball courts with rust-eaten rims, stood the old community center. Its brick walls were faded, windows streaked with age. The doors sagged slightly on their hinges. But Jaden saw past all that. He saw field trips with his class, saw Malik learning to ride a bike in the parking lot, saw his mother waiting in the doorway with hot cocoa after volunteering. It wasn't just a building. It was a piece of his childhood, one that deserved more than neglect. Inside, the heat struggled against the cold, humming loudly like an old man clearing his throat. The community board sat at folding tables arranged in a loose circle. Elders, teens, exhausted parents, faces worn by work and winter, but all of them curious about why Cole Automotive suddenly cared. Jaden stepped forward, project binder under his arm. An older woman in a knitted hat squinted at him. "You Marlene's boy?" "No, ma'am," he said with a small smile. "I'm just someone who grew up here. Jaden Brooks." Recognition flickered across several faces. "That Brooks boy?" one man murmured. "Sarah's son? The one who used to fix bikes out back?" Jaden felt a warmth bloom in his chest. "Yes, sir. That's me." A hush settled. Not suspicion, just surprise, and something like hope. He unfolded the blueprints across the table. Visions of refurbished classrooms, new vocational bays, computer labs, a proper heating system, and a certification workshop for auto tech training. As he spoke, he watched their faces soften. No corporate jargon, no rehearsed pitch. Just the truth. "I want kids here to have what I didn't," he said. "A path, a chance, a reason to believe they belong in the jobs people told them they'd never reach." Silence hung for a moment. Then the woman in the knitted hat sniffled, wiping her eye. "About time somebody remembered us," she muttered. A ripple of quiet agreement moved around the room. Approval. Real, full-hearted approval. Jaden felt it settle deep inside him like a seed planted in fertile ground. That evening, he returned home to find Malik bouncing in the living room and their mother sitting up straighter than she had in months. "How'd it go?" Malik asked eagerly. Jaden dropped his binder onto the couch, still stunned. "They loved it." His mother pressed a hand to her chest. "I knew they would," she whispered. "Your heart has always been your gift." He walked to her side and knelt. Her eyes shimmered as she cupped his cheek with her warm hand. "I'm proud of you, baby," she said softly. "Not for making it out, but for never forgetting where you came from." Her words wrapped around him like a blanket, but the momentum didn't stop there. 3 weeks later, the project officially broke ground. Heavy machinery rolled through the lot. Crews hammered, drilled, measured. Reporters snapped photos of Marlene and Jaden standing side by side beneath the banner. Cole Automotive Community Technical Center. People from the neighborhood crowded behind the barriers, waving, cheering, calling out his name as though he were a hometown hero. But nothing pierced Jaden deeper than the moment Malik whispered, "That's gonna have your fingerprints all over it, Jay." He swallowed hard, overwhelmed, because it was true. He wasn't invisible anymore, not overlooked, not dismissed. He mattered. After the ceremony, as the construction noise quieted, Marlene approached him with her hands tucked into her coat pockets. "You did well today," she said. "The board is impressed, the community is excited, and the company sees something in you, potential not just for this project, but far beyond it." Jaden shook his head slowly. "I'm just trying to do right." Marlene's smile deepened into something more private, more knowing. "That's why you were chosen," she said. "But there's one more step I need you to take." He frowned slightly. "What step?" She motioned toward her car. "I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow morning, alone. There's something I haven't told you yet. Something important." A quiet breeze stirred around them, carrying the smell of fresh lumber and cold air. Jaden felt the shift, something subtle but unmistakable. Today had been triumph. Tomorrow would be revelation. As he watched Marlene walk away, her figure framed by the glow of the construction lights, a shiver ran through him. Not of cold, but anticipation. The project was just the beginning. Whatever waited in that office was bigger, deeper, personal, and it would change everything he thought he knew, for better or for heartbreak. But there was no turning back now. His next chapter was waiting. Jaden barely slept that night. His mind swirled with blueprints, community voices, Marlene's mysterious tone, and the strange weight in her eyes when she'd said, "There's something I haven't told you yet." He lay awake long after midnight, staring at the cracked ceiling of the home he'd known his whole life. Snowlight crept in through the curtains, pale and still, painting everything with a quiet chill. Malik's soft snoring drifted down the hallway. His mother coughed faintly in her sleep. Jaden curled onto his side, heart heavy and hopeful at once. Tomorrow would change something. He just didn't know what. Morning arrived cold and bright. Detroit's skyline glittered with frost as the sun rose over it like a blessing. Jaden dressed in his best clothes, simple, clean, pressed as well as he could manage, and took the bus downtown. His reflection in the bus window looked different. Not the man who had been yelled at in a garage. Not the man who knelt in the snow to fix a stranger's SUV. Someone steadier. Someone who had earned a place at tables he once thought were locked to people like him. Still, his hands trembled. When he arrived at Cole Automotive headquarters, security greeted him by name. The elevator swept him upward without delay. The 38th floor opened to a hallway quiet enough to hear the hum of hidden heaters. Marlene's office door was ajar. She stood inside looking out the tall window toward the river, hands clasped behind her back, posture calm but somehow heavier than usual. "Come in, Jaden," she said without turning. He entered, closing the door softly behind him. The air felt denser here, as if the truth itself waited in the room. Marlene slowly faced him, her expression warm but tinged with the kind of seriousness people only show before delivering life-changing news. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "There's much I want you to hear, and even more I want you to understand." Jaden nodded, unsure whether to sit or stand. "Please," she gestured gently, "take a seat." He did. She remained standing, as if the weight of her words required full height. "Jaden," she began, "I'm stepping down." The words hit him like a sudden draft. "Stepping down?" he repeated. She smiled faintly. "I'm 68. My health is steady but not what it once was. It's time for Cole Automotive to begin transitioning into its next generation of leadership." Jaden swallowed hard. He hadn't expected anything close to this. She continued, "For months, I've been studying everyone at this company, watching, learning, seeing who carries not just skill but character. You'd be surprised how rare that becomes the higher you go, Tung." Jaden's chest tightened. "And then," she said softly, "a young man knelt in the snow to help an old woman he thought was nobody." Their eyes met, and everything changed. Jaden didn't know how to respond. Emotion swelled in him. Gratitude, disbelief, humility all tangled into something too big for words. Marlene walked slowly to her desk and opened a long, thin drawer. She removed a leather folder, deep brown, embossed with the Cole Automotive crest. She placed it gently in front of him. "What is this?" he whispered. "My last gift before retirement," she said. "A scholarship, a full one. For your continued education, engineering, business, leadership training. Whatever path you choose, the company will sponsor it." Jaden felt the air leave his lungs. "Marlene, I didn't ask for—" "You earned it," she cut in, her voice full and warm. "Not through favoritism, through kindness, through honesty, through the courage to stay good in a world that rarely rewards goodness." His eyes burned, but she wasn't finished. "Jaden," she said more softly, "I want you on a leadership track. Not tomorrow, not next year, but one day. I want you ready to sit in the higher floors of this building, not because you fixed my car, but because you restored something I'd forgotten." Her next words came out almost like a confession. "You reminded me why I built this company in the first place." Jaden bowed his head, unable to stop the tears gathering at his lashes. He wasn't a man who cried easily. Life had taught him to hold things in, but this broke something open inside him. "I don't know what to say," he whispered hoarsely. "You say yes," she said gently. "You accept the chance. You use it not just to rise, but to lift others with you." Jaden swallowed, voice trembling. "I'll do it. I promise. I'll do everything I can." "I know you will." For a moment neither spoke, and snow drifted outside the window. The city hummed far below, unaware that a new future had just been set in motion. Then Marlene's smile deepened. "There's one more thing." Jaden looked up, startled. She reached into her desk again and pulled out another document, this one thinner, but bearing the same embossed crest. "I've arranged for the new Community Technical Center to be named after someone important," she said quietly. "Someone who shaped you long before I met you." Jaden froze. The document read, "The Brooks Foundation for Second Chances in honor of Sarah Brooks, his mother's name, his mother's legacy, their family, etched into something permanent, powerful, hopeful." Jaden pressed a hand against his mouth as emotion shook through him. "Marlene, you didn't have to." "No," she said softly. "I wanted to. Because you repaired more than an engine that day. You repaired my faith in people. You reminded me of the humanity business often forgets." She stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Steady, grounding. "And now," she finished, "I want your mother's name to stand where the next generation of young people can see it, so they know someone believed in second chances. Someone believed in them." Jaden wiped at his eyes, laughing shakily. She'd be so proud." "I know," Marlene whispered, and she raised a good man. Weeks later, the new center opened under a bright spring sky. Children ran across the fresh pavement. Teens lined up to test new tools and equipment. Parents walked through the renovated halls in awe. A banner fluttered above the entrance. "The Brooks Foundation for Second Chances Grand Opening." Jaden stood at the podium, hands gripping the edges, looking out at a crowd of neighbors, co-workers, old friends, people who had once known him as that quiet Brooks boy. He found Malik in the front row, grinning like the sun. His mother sat beside him in her wheelchair, wrapped in a blue shawl, eyes shining with pride so deep it could carry oceans. Jaden cleared his throat. "I grew up in this neighborhood," he began. "I fixed my first bike behind this building, learned my first lessons about life here. And today we get to give something back, something big." He paused, voice steadying. "Second chances aren't given. They're shared, passed forward, kept alive by the people who believe the world can be better." He looked toward Marlene, who stood modestly near the side, hands folded. "That belief changed everything for me," he said. "And now, I hope it changes everything for someone else." Applause rose, warm and thunderous. When the ribbon was cut, the doors opened wide, and Jaden stepped aside, letting the community pour in first. It felt right. It felt full circle. It felt like purpose. Later, as he wheeled his mother through the main hallway, she reached up and squeezed his hand. "Baby," she said softly, "you did all this." Jaden shook his head, tears gathering again. "No, Mama, we did." They stopped under the engraved dedication plaque. Her name gleamed under the afternoon light, and for a moment, the entire world felt still, hopeful, kind, whole. Across the room, Marlene watched him, shoulders relaxed, expression peaceful, knowing she had chosen well. Jaden breathed in deeply. His life had been rebuilt from one small, simple act of kindness. A cup of compassion for a stranger. A gesture most people would walk past. But kindness never disappears. It circles back. It multiplies. And now, standing in a building carrying his family's name, surrounded by possibility and future, Jaden understood something deeply. Changing one life can change hundreds. Changing hundreds can change a city. And changing a city starts with a heart willing to kneel in the snow. If this story touched you, even a little, please leave a comment. Your kindness helps us share more stories like this. Drop a simple one or even a single emoji to let us know you're here with us. And if you want more stories of hope, second chances, and everyday heroes, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss what comes next. Your one small comment keeps these stories alive.